Welcome to the Profile Corner. I've just set up this radial arm saw so that hopefully it's going to be cutting square. Now, it was a 1/16 of an inch off at the full extension of the arm. So I've already done that, and what I had to do to fix that is I had to release the locking lever that controls whether or not this arm is able to move, and then I had to take a 1/4 inch hex head wrench and loosen up a screw that's in the back here, right back in this area back in here. And once I did that, I was able to freely move this arm. I used an aluminum framing square to make sure that the blade was tracking square. And then once I had that set, I locked down this arm, verified that it was still square, and it was not. So then I had to go through and redo that process and redo it again. I had to redo it 3 times to make sure that it was tracking square. Once I had it tracking square, I made sure that this arm was locked down, and then there's a dial right here, or a ring right here. I had to twist this counterclockwise until it stopped moving, and that moves the 90-degree stop. And then I locked down the screw using the 1/4 inch wrench back here again, and I'm hoping that it's going to retain that 90-degree setting. I have not tried doing a test cut and then releasing this lock and then seeing if the 90-degree positive stop works. It only catches from the one direction, which still has me a little bit concerned. Let's try to do a test cut and see if we get a square cut. I have a black walnut board here that is surfaced on 4 sides, so I'll use this. I've got a knot here on the end, and I'm going to try to chop that off. I don't want to remove all of it. I'll just cut off the half that's got some missing portions in it, and then we'll use that to check and see whether or not it's square. And if it is square, then what I'll do is I'll try to release the lock back here, take it off 90 degrees, and then see if I can get it to return to 90 degrees, and then I'll make another cut. Okay, so I've got the saw plugged in. Okay, there you can see that the saw tried to self-feed as soon as it hit this hard spot in this knot. So you do have to be ready for that to hold it back while you're pulling it out. So let's get the square and see if this board is square cut. Okay, that does look like it's square, so that's a positive sign. It's going to be hard for me to hold this up so that you can see that. So let's see now if we release this lock back here, and oddly the lock turns using left-hand thread, so you have to actually turn it to the right to get it to release. And then you can push this down and then swing the arm. Now I've got to bring the saw motor out, raise it up a little bit so that it clears the table. Okay. Okay. Now we're able to move it side to side. Okay, and let's see if it returns to the 90-degree stop. Okay, now you can see that the 90-degree stop is missing in the one direction, but it works in the other direction. I don't know if all the Delta 10-inch professional saws behave that way, where it only engages the 90-degree stop in one direction. But that's what I'm seeing here. Now I need to turn this lock counterclockwise to lock it down. Now we'll do another test cut and see if the cut is square. Now I need to drop the motor down so that the blade is just into the table. Okay, it is right there. Okay, so we only made a half cut through the last time, so let's try a full cut this time. We'll see if we're square. That may be off ever so slightly. I've got a small gap at the top, and that suggests that it may be a little bit off. We'll try another test cut here and see if that has better results. Make sure I've got it pushed against the fence all the way. And we've got a nice clean cut, which is good to see. There's no problems with smoothness here. I don't see any blade marks on it. I don't really see any chip out, and that's partially because we've got a zero clearance on this side, as before the blade was coming out slightly to the right. And now it's coming out square, hopefully. Okay, that looks better. It's within the realm of possibility here that it'll work. I just have to be real careful when bringing it back to 90 degree that I make sure I hit the stop fully. Okay, so that looks good. Also, after I tuned this up to make sure that it was square to the table, I also went through the procedure that was in the manual for making sure that the blade is in fact not healing as it comes out, which would mean that either the front or the back of the blade is coming out slightly twisted as you bring the arm out. And I'm not seeing any signs of roughness in the cut here on the end of the board, and so that's further confirmation that I don't have a healing problem with this saw. So that's a very good result. Let's go over to the 12-inch single-phase saw, and we'll see if we can do a similar procedure on that saw to get the blade squared up with the table. The procedure to do that in some ways is quite a bit simpler than the procedure done here, but the manual says that you need to remove the blade and replace it with the arbor wrench. So let's go over and we'll take care of that right now. I'm in the process of fixing the 90-degree setup on the single phase Delta saw. I've removed the cap from the top of the pivot point. Using a standard bladed screwdriver, there's 3 screws that hold the cap in place. Down here, I've attached the wrench for removing the blade to the saw arbor as directed in the instructions. I've set up a square right here that I know is a true square. And what I've done is I've set it so that it aligns here at the back by the fence. If I move this forward, I can see it drifting away from the square by roughly 1/32 of an inch. So to fix that, I'm supposed to use an 1/8 inch hex wrench up here, loosen this set screw on this side and tighten the set screw on the other side. Okay. I believe when this set screw is tightened, that's when it actually shifts over. Unfortunately, it's not as easy to tell where you're at when you're using the wrench compared with when you're using a saw blade in terms of how much more you've got to turn. Okay, so that was another 1/4 turn. It does still drag a little bit more as it gets closer to the fence. I'm hoping that I didn't go too far. So what I'll do is I'll switch over to using the saw blade. Since this is an aluminum framing square, I shouldn't risk damaging the carbide teeth in the blade. So I'll do that, and then I'll confirm whether or not it's in the right position. It appears to be a perfect 90 now. Let's check it from the other side. Yeah, that looks to be correct. Now I'll just put the 3 screws back into the cap. And I've got to make sure that I get the pointer aligned with a 0 point on the cap. Okay, next up I need to verify that I don't have a healing problem in the saw cut. So I've got to come up with a board to lay up against the fence to raise the framing square up off the surface of the table. Okay, to remove healing, you need to have 3 2x boards positioned as such, and then you need to have a high fence board installed, and then what you need is a framing square, and you've got to put the framing square up against the blade, and it has to be an equal distance at the back and the front. I'm not seeing any issues here, so I don't need to go through any adjustment steps. So now this saw should be ready to be put to work, cutting square boards. Okay, let's try a test cut on this Surface 4 side black walnut board, and we'll compare the cut quality with the cut quality that we had at the 10-inch saw. There you can see I've written 10-inch on the end of the board so that we can do a comparison. I want to see if this saw is cutting square now from both sides of the fence. So I'll do this side first. This side was always out of square until I jointed the board, of course. That is the fence. Okay, so here's the cut quality from the 12-inch saw compared with the 10-inch saw. It looks pretty much identical to me. I do see a little bit more chip out on the bottom of the board from the 12-inch saw than from the 10-inch saw, and I think that's because the table surface here has quite a bit of material removed due to the way the previous owner was using the saw. It looks nice and smooth other than that. Let's see if it's a square cut. It does look like it's square to me, so I'll try it on the other side of the fence and see if we get a square cut on the other side also now. Okay, so here's the result, and that does look like it's square to me. I'm referencing the same edge that was against the fence, so I'm happy with that. It looks good in terms of it being square. I don't plan on changing the miter angle at all on this particular saw, but I may do it eventually, and I won't feel so bad about it because this table surface is already cut up. I'm not seeing any chip out on the bottom edge here, so maybe it was a little bit better supported when the board was on this other side of the fence. Okay, that's all for today. Thanks for watching. Bye.